Welcome to Raytown Chop Shop, in Part 9 of the KawaBunga build.
One of the pitfalls of any project is, when it's finally drivable, the tendency is to drive it more and work on it less. The same thing happened with my 33 Willys. Once it moved under its own power, I drove it for 14 years in primer and plexiglass before finally finishing it. Now that it's painted, glass is installed, and the interior is upholstered, it spends most of the time under a car cover.
The same thing sort of happened with the KawaBunga, for now. As promised, we put all the wires from the handlebars to the engine in a red wiring loom. We'll probably end up doing the same thing when we rewire the instrument panel and mount it in front of the handlebars.
Austin finally got around to securing the rear cover over the electronics he had mounted earlier. He used a couple of self-tapping screws to hold the back of the cover to the metal plates he'd welded on the original Kawasaki frame.
Nice and simple.
After torquing down the screws, he checked to see how secure the cover was. Looks like that's all we're going to need to hold it in place.
After driving the go-kart a few times, we knew we had to stiffen up the shifter rod. The 3/8 round rod was bowing way too much. I picked up a length of 3/4 inch angle iron. With a couple of hose clamps to hold it in place, I positioned the angle iron directly under the shifter rod. I squeezed the two pieces of metal together and started tack welding.
Once he had a couple of tacks in place, we removed the shift rod and Austin spot welded the rod and angle iron together.
Welded in 9 places, the shifter rod shouldn't bow nearly as much as it did before.
You may have noticed in the earlier episodes that the exhaust noise was ear-piercing. After researching mufflers and how much they cost, Austin decided to make his own. He cut a couple of end caps out of the go-kart's original floor, which wasn't easy since the sheet metal is 16 gauge. He shot some stripper on the end caps and began removing the paint. Once all the paint was off, he used a hole saw to cut the opening in the center of the caps where the exhaust pipe is going to go.
With the exhaust pipe in the vise, I welded one of the caps to it. I checked to make sure everything was going to fit, then finished welding the first end cap. I marked where the muffler was going to be on the exhaust pipe and began drilling holes. Lots of holes. The holes in the exhaust pipe deflect the sound waves produced by the engine. This actually cancels some of the noise, which is the basic principle of a muffler.
Yep, and that's a lot of holes. Glad he was the one doing all the drilling and not me.
I had some ceramic wool left over from another project. I wrapped it around the drilled exhaust pipe, then wrapped the screen wire around the wool to hold it in place. Some mufflers use fiberglass, that's where the term glass pack comes from. Once all the wool was wrapped, I slid the big exhaust pipe over it and installed the other end cap.
Time to weld it all up. Austin made sure there weren't any openings on the homemade muffler. If the muffler wasn't completely sealed, there would be an exhaust leak, and nobody likes an exhaust leak.
I did a trial fit of the new muffler to make sure we had enough clearance. I cut a slit on one end of the exhaust pipe so I could squeeze it close around the original exhaust. I tacked a piece of metal to the back of the frame so I could clamp to the tailpipe. Before the final installation of the new muffler and tailpipe, I wanted to hear the difference between before and after. Once the engine warmed up, I hit the throttle. The exhaust noise was high-pitched and actually made my ears ring. I'm pretty sure the neighbors didn't like it either.
Now that he had the original exhaust noise on camera, Austin welded the new exhaust pipe to the original exhaust pipe. With the way he designed the whole system, we should be able to remove the entire exhaust in one piece when it comes time to pull the engine.
With the new muffler in place, I fired up the engine. When I gave it some throttle, I could tell the exhaust had a deeper tone. At least it didn't make my ears ring anymore. Thanks to O'Reilly Auto Parts and the exhaust pipes, we have a new muffler for less than $10, and Dad won't be getting any angry phone calls from the neighbors.
During the test drives, we were well aware of how low the KawaBunga sat. With such low ground clearance, we were afraid of hitting the sprocket and brake rotor, especially when we weren't driving it on paved roads. Austin ordered 2 new wheels and tires from Go Power Sports. We went from 14.5-inch tires to 19-inch tires. This gave us a lot more ground clearance and also leveled out the stance of the go-kart.
New exhaust, new rear tires. We're almost done with the mechanicals on the KawaBunga. A few more little things to do, and then it'll be time to tear it all down and start on the cosmetics.
One of the dads in Austin Scout Troop saw one of our episodes on the KawaBunga build and found out we could weld, sort of. He asked if we could help him weld in a couple of panels on the car he'd just bought for his son. It was a nice distraction, and we were glad to do it for him.
Mom got tired of watching everybody else drive the KawaBunga, so we gave her a chance to try it out for herself. After I gave her a couple pointers, she revved it up and took off. A lot faster than Dad did on his first test drive.
I don't drive the Willys as much now that it's finished. But I did have to bring it out one time to race my daughter. We've been bragging about outrunning Austin's 54 Ford all night at the local drag strip. She didn't have a lot to say after old Dad ran off and left her in the dust.
Well, that's it for part 9 of the KawaBunga build. Hope you enjoyed it.